Hello everyone, as you can see by my mini ears, we are going to be reviewing another Disney film that is not a princess film, otherwise I'd be wearing a crown. So without further ado, let me discuss Treasure Island, or as the Disney version likes to call it, Treasure Planet. Yeah, and this one is not really held in Disney's, or held as one of Disney's finer works. I think this can be understandable, but I think there are certain aspects of this film that actually do fairly well and work, and then there might be other aspects that may seem a little bit odd. Again, it's kind of interesting how Disney decided to take this from a spaceshipy, steampunky direction instead of taking it in the more traditional route of Treasure Island, and instead calling their film Treasure Planet. I believe there's also a Disney version of Treasure Island, but it's actually an action film, so more than free to check that out if you want to. But we're basically going to be discussing the original source material that the Treasure Planet adaptation was based upon, which is, again, Treasure Island, except in this version, in the Disney version, there is a whole emphasis on that it's a planet, and that a lot of the stuff that deals with sort of the setting is with space and sort of the future / steampunk that still has old English garb and stuff. Yeah, it's a little, it can be a little odd and it can be a little distracting, I think, for the audience, but what they need to understand is basically steampunk is like mixing in old with newer technology and sort of creating a world that has these mixed elements in it. And that's what Disney decided to go with. And obviously the original work, Treasure Island, is a lot more grounded in that it takes place on Earth, and that it revolves around pirates, or traditional pirates as we call them. And the original work is based upon Robert Louis Stevenson's novel, basically, Treasure Island. And again, the Disney version is an adaptation of this book. So again, they are using the source material. There is a lot of plot points that are fairly similar, so I thought that this would be a perfect one to do. And again, I am going in order. But after Tarzan, there is sort of a break portion within Disney that I should mention, because again, we are skipping films. So after Tarzan was Fantasia 2000, and that's basically taking sort of what Fantasia did and just making up stories or bits of animation and putting them together, and is not really based on a true source material, so I had to discard that one. Dinosaur, which is the first, I think, Disney CGI movie, actually is not based on anything either. It's just about dinosaurs, and yeah, having to deal with being part of a changing world, because again, dinosaurs were a part of a time that was completely different, and changing, so you kind of see that throughout the film, but nothing based on original source material. Then we had Atlantis, The Lost Empire, and that one's actually not based on anything either, and it was really Disney's first attempt to do sort of a sci-fi type-esque film, but again, not really based upon a source material. Maybe the legend surrounding Atlantis, but again, since we don't really know much about Atlantis, we really can't say whether or not this is really based upon a material. It's just something Disney made up. And then after that, we have Lilo and Stitch, which was held to a much, I think, higher success than the past two previous films, like Dinosaur and Atlantis. It seemed like Lilo and Stitch people seem to recognize. Again, not based on original source material, sort of focusing in on Disney characters and Disney ideas, so that you could say were inspired maybe by other films, but not based upon an original source material. And then this is where we get Treasure Planet. Now, Treasure Planet might be the Black Cauldron film for Disney after their Renaissance period. I think you could make that argument, either this film or Atlantis or Dinosaur, but again, it does seem like that these three ones in particular, Disney doesn't seem to like to market or praise. Heck, they even have a princess in Atlantis and they don't even put her in the franchise because they didn't offer a lot of blockbuster success. So yeah, this is kind of entering a new realm here of Disney, where we see how they were really struggling to find their footing and their ground and sort of kind of recover from their post-Renaissance films. So again, we get this movie, and is it a bad movie? I don't really think so. I don't think it's horrible. Sure, there are aspects maybe that could have been handled better, but there is still some cool stuff in this one. It's just, I guess, not as unique as maybe the other Disney films that came during this time and before this time. So, without further ado, let us talk about the original work, Treasure Island, and how this relates to Treasure Planet. But basically, Treasure Island, it takes place at first in an inn. And again, we have not all of the characters have the same names, but the two main characters do in both works, and that's Jim Hawkins and Silver. So again, two similar characters, and Bones, or Billy Bones, but you'll basically see how right off the bat Disney starts to make their aspects a little bit different. And it sort of starts off with sort of introducing Jim and the fact that he's the son of these owners of the inn, and I guess it sort of assumes that his mom and dad are still present. And this is something that I should get off right off the bat, is that Disney took this element way differently. It sort of starts off us seeing Jim as sort of a rebel, as sort of a teenage loose cannon, so to speak, because he does things that are not within the law. And you'll see this at the beginning of the film, and this is because he has daddy issues, in that his dad left when he was really young, and this affected him a lot, and he has a feeling like that it's his fault, and you'll kind of see how his dad left when he was really young. So I think that has a really profound impact on kids if it's at a fairly young age, because they don't know any better, and then they go on with that sort of burden throughout their life. So Disney, I think, was really trying to develop an interesting setup here, because I don't think we've seen this in a Disney movie that sort of talks about this aspect, because either one of the parents is dead, or both parents die. So it's really doesn't touch in on this aspect of, I guess, divorce or a family member ultimately choosing to leave the family. So I think that is a profound impact, leaves a profound impact on the audience. But I think, in a sense, it would be nice to see Disney maybe do more of these kinds of things. I think they sort of attempted the same thing kind of in Lilo and Stitch, with the parents sort of dying. But when you're talking about a parent leaving, it's a completely different kind of emotional struggle. So again, it does seem like this was really the first attempt for Disney to put up that the dad just straight up left and didn't come back. So that's really established way on in the beginning. In the original work, from the research that I pulled, there's no mention of any kind of really family issue. It seems like the original work just opens like, yeah, Jim's just living his ordinary life, and he's just taking care of this inn and helping the family out, and that's really all that his job is. But Jim in the Disney work already starts off as being someone who is very distraught and has issues because of the fact that there was this event that happened in his life. So really it's a completely different sort of setup in the beginning. And not only that, but Billy Bones is actually a fairly different character. Again, these are all human characters in the Treasure Island original source material work. There's no like creatures or unrealistic animals. The Disney work really tries to mix in humans with animals at times. Bones is, I guess you could call more of like an alien. I don't know what he's supposed to be in the Disney work. He looks like just some creature. No idea what he could be, if he's intended to be like an alien or no clue. I almost want to say he kind of looks like a turtle with his neck in the Disney work, but I could be wrong. But again, they're in both works, except Billy Bones is just a drunken seaman, and in the Disney work he's some kind of alien or some kind of creature. But despite their different outward and sort of inward personality, it seems like we get more of Bones in the original work. Bones starts off as being a regular at the inn, and he's sort of a drunk. He's sort of they kind of make him off, I think, as more of a loser, and that, he's made a ton of mistakes in his life. And those mistakes kind of in the original work start to haunt him when he comes with this chest that he has. And basically he ends up at one point getting in a fight with one of his former crew members, because it is emphasized that he is part of the Captain Flint's ship and crew. So really we do get that sense in the original work that he has some baggage. And again, he gets confronted by one of these people, Black Dog, there we go, that's the guy's name. And basically he sort of, I think it's implied, because again the original work is told through Jim's perspective, that he got beaten up and basically he ended up with a stroke and has to stay at the inn, and more than usual, I guess, instead of just going out for a drink, he's going in there to stay. And basically, as he's recovering, Pew, who's another former crew member that he was a part of as Flint's crew, I guess you could say, because again, we're talking that Bones, as well as Black Dog, as well as Pew, were all part of the same crew under Captain Flint. So just keep Captain Flint in mind. He kind of plays a role in this entire story, even though he's nowhere in the story. But basically, Pew comes in with this letter to Bones, kind of saying, hey, you need to pay your dues here. Sort of like, or we'll come and get you. And I guess when Bones reads this, he kind of just goes, he just kind of just drops dead. It's implied, I guess, that it could have been like a stroke, or like just the shock, I guess, just overwhelmed him, so he wasn't able to survive. But I mean, it seems like that he just the magnitude was just too much for him. And then ultimately, as you know, Bones being not the most, I guess, responsible character, he hasn't paid Jim and his mother, who own the inn, money for what for his stays there. And basically, Jim and his mom try to collect the money that's in the chest, and then at the same time, the pirates, I think, are after the pirates of that are all part of Flint's crew, sort of come in to find Bones, because they know that he has what they want. And basically, while Jim and his mom are fleeing the inn, once the pirates come, Jim manages to find this mysterious oilskin. And basically an oilskin is like a fabric with a fabric-like canvas. So it's completely different than what the Disney version has played up with so far. So in the Disney version, we see Bones, and we only see him once. It's not like that he has a real connection with the inn or with the characters. He just crash lands a spaceship, and I guess from the impact, it was too much on him, and he just sort of dies like right there on the spot, and that's where Jim discovers the map. And basically, the map is different than a mysterious oilskin like in the original work. And again, the original work, the mysterious oilskin is sort of the map to get to Treasure Island. But the sphere that Jim ends up finding is what leads them to Treasure Planet. See, you know, that's that whole shtick there is basically sort of the difference. And the interesting thing is the too about the sphere in the Disney work is that when Jim looks at it at first, like nobody else, I guess, is able to figure out what exactly it is. And it seemed like that Bones didn't really mention anything about it, but basically all they find in that treasure chest that he has in the Disney work is this sphere that's supposed to take them to Treasure Planet. And basically Jim, I guess, is really the only one who can like open it, because it's not like the sphere that'll you just press a button and it'll show you it. You have to, I guess, it's like a code almost. So he's like just fiddling around with it and then he opens it. So it's an interesting way to, I guess, approach a map. And basically when he opens this sphere, it creates like this whole map, sort of like a screen, kind of a sphere-like screen for everybody to see and kind of get a sense of where this Treasure Planet is. So again, completely different approach and completely different way of sort of introducing or giving us an idea of Bones and who he was. Like, we really don't get a sense at all in the Disney work about who he is, and you know, we really don't. And the only thing that Jim gets out of that guy is just beware of the I want to say it has something to do with beware of like the I don't know if he says the exact word Cyclops or just somebody with a distorted eye. Just somebody. That's the person you should be afraid of. That's the only thing like that we get out of that character. But basically, as the original work continues, Jim takes this oilskin to Dr. Livesey, and I don't really know if this character was inspired by Disney to make as Doppler. I don't know. I don't think that's fairly clear, because there's a Dr. Livesey and then there's also a Squire Trelawney. So there are these two people that basically Jim takes the oilskin to see, and then And basically it contains a logbook that sort of tells of Captain Flint's journeys and his looting, basically. And then there is, within this oilskin too, a map with basically the location of where this island is and where they can get the treasure. So that's how that's established in the original work. And then the Squire Trelawney, sort of in the original work, decides to make a crew. He's like, okay, we need to get a sailing vessel so we can go and find this treasure. He finds a captain named Alexander Smollett. In the Disney work, we have actually a female captain named Amelia, who's sort of the quasi captain of the Disney work. And then Long John Silver, which again is the Silver, the same character in the Disney work. The thing too of having these sort of different names and different characters as well is there's also a similar yet different relationship going on in the Disney work between Jim and Silver. In the original work, Jim is suspicious, like he is in the Disney work, especially with having Bones tell him beware of the Cyclops, or beware of the guy with the eye. He's not somebody you should trust, and that's obvious that he would be suspicious of this. And also, it should be noted too that even though there is this kind of establishment of a map, and Doppler is sort of that character that takes Jim to where he needs to go, which is basically on a ship. It does seem like that Doppler is not really the lead figure, in that he sort of hires these people to have a vessel. It's almost like he just takes Jim to where he needs to go if he wants to go on such a mission, and then basically he sort of goes out of his way to, I guess, ask for a crew, but it's not like he sort of takes charge. Doppler's not really the taking in charge kind of person, as you'll probably see in the Disney work. So there's that aspect as well that's different. But not only is that different, even though Jim is, again, in both works suspicious of Silver, there is this different relationship. In the original work, I don't think they play the father-son relationship out all that much in the original work. In the Disney work, it is clearly emphasized that they want to make John Silver, or Long John Silver, and Jim, these people who kind of fill a void within each other's lives. Like, Silver is sort of the father-like figure, and Jim is like the son, and he's sort of like the dad he never had. That's kind of what Disney was going for. In the original work, it doesn't seem like that this was all really necessary on the original work's part, so there really isn't a really strong bond. In the Disney work, you really get the strong bond that's there, even though at points you'll see how Silver really portrays Jim. So again, it is a stronger, I think, connection than the original work plays it out to be. So basically, in the Disney work, it seems like Jim has these suspicions of Silver, but then they sort of kind of form this bond. So it's one of those things where it's not really revealed, I think, on Jim's part that Silver ultimately will betray him. But in the original work, Jim ultimately discovers that Silver intends to murder the people that are on this crew to go on this voyage that are not part of Flint's brigade, because they think that treasure ultimately belongs to them and not these people like the captain, the Alexander Smollett, or Jim, or Dr. Levacy. They don't think that those people that are not part of Flint's crew deserve this treasure. So there is this whole kind of conspiracy to ultimately kill them all off. And basically, Jim sort of reveals this, and when they get to shore, Jim ultimately separates from the group, and then he ends up seeing Silver murder, actually, one of the crew members. And this is where he encounters Ben Gunn, and Ben Gunn is actually an ex-member of Flint's group, and he was, I guess, marooned on an island. And if you don't know what marooned means, it means basically abandoned there and left to kind of, I guess, just starve or just die out. And basically he ends up being sort of a nice character, and sort of helps Jim out. But in the Disney work, this is where it kind of splits off once they get to the planet or island, which in Disney's case is a planet. But basically, when they get to the planet, all the good guys, Jim, Doppler, Amelia, and Morph, who is kind of Silver's pet, but you know, he's nice and innocent, and he kind of goes along with their side too, and sort of develops a bond again with Jim. But they all abandon the ship, sort of, after they kind of know they're kind of outnumbered by all the pirates, because again there is this sort of conspiracy to portray the other side, and again develop these two sides. You have Silver's side and Jim's side, and you'll see this in both works. But basically, this is where, after they're all abandoned, where they come into contact with Ben, who I guess was inspired by the original work. But Ben in the Disney work is not just this ordinary guy who got abandoned. He's a robot. And he's supposed to be done for comedic relief, but in the original work, he sort of served as more of a plot point than anything else. But basically, in the Disney work, Jim tries to see if they can get the map, because when they abandoned the ship, they forgot that, oh no, they have the map now, so they're going to find the treasure. So he tries to see if he can get the map back. But in the original work, this kind of plot point of Jim going into danger kind of plays a little out differently, in that and basically once they land on shore, there's sort of this dispute among the, because I guess because too, Jim did tell them about this, like, hey, they're really planning to rat you out, so you better do something about it. So basically the captain and sort of Silver have this kind of argument, and basically this ends up into a lot of fighting, and then you'll see how ultimately, in order to sort of kind of ameliorate, I guess, the dispute, Jim decides to go to cut the ship's anchor rope so that the ship can move away, and so that the people that are sort of on his side can be separated from, I guess, sort of the violence. I guess that's really what he ultimately intended with that in the original work. But eventually he does get caught, and But at the same time, again, they do try to emphasize too, though, in the original work, that Silver's not really this cold-hearted person. They do kind of point him out as to being someone that wouldn't want to hurt a kid. So basically, when the other crew members are like, yeah, let's torture this kid so we can get information, Silver's like, no, I'm not gonna have you do that. And then basically this is when all the other pirates are like, well, then you can't be a part of us. So this is when they kind of kick Silver out of the group. And then ultimately the next day the pirates sort of go up on shore and they see if they can find the treasure. And then basically when they find the location, there's no treasure. And this is when Jim's counterparts sort of come in and sort of defeat all of the pirates. And this is where Ben Gunn, whose character we saw earlier, comes and then basically actually shows the characters, the good guys, where the treasure is. And basically he stored all of it in a cave while he was on the island. And this comes to a point where Silver too sort of surrenders to the crew members. But again, sort of at the end, you know that he's kind of still a pirate, and he ultimately escapes with a little bit of the treasure. And everybody gets a little bit of some of the treasure at the end. That's sort of how the original work plays out to the end. It's sort of a good treasure hunters versus bad pirate treasure hunters, and it sort of plays out the good triumphs over, evil or whatever, and in the end some people, can still get away with something. And that's kind of what Silver does at the end. And he sort of is played out to be a character that's in it for himself for the most part. And even though he has sort of a soft spot maybe for the boy, it's not really overly implied so much. It's just implied to that one point where he's like, I'm not going to torture somebody. So that's really how the original work plays out. But basically when we're talking about the Disney work and where Jim tries to get the map back, this is where he ends up being captured. Sort of similar to the original work where we see how he's caught, but for a completely different reason. And basically when he's captured, he sort of is forced to show Silver and everybody else where the treasure is. And once he goes to this treasure, or once they find this treasure, the robot Ben says, oh yeah, by the way guys, if the treasure is discovered, you're all gonna blow up. This whole place is gonna just blow up. So it's again, it is kind of trying to play out the part of, we're in space and things explode a lot more in space. I don't know, but it seems like that they wanted to really make this epic climax and figured, yeah, maybe this would be a good idea. So basically, at the same time, if you're wondering where Doppler and Amelia are, they basically end up getting captured by the other pirates in the process. But once the planet explodes, and we get this huge, gigantic, overly the top climax, we see how the treasure sort of goes with it. And that for the most part, all of the treasure is gone. There's no more treasure at all, really. So there's really that selling point. Thank you, phone, for stop ringing. Why whenever do I make videos that it suddenly starts ringing? That's so annoying. Okay, but basically, it's sort of a good triumphs over evil sort of climax mixed in with the fact that the planet explodes and there's whole emphasis on trying to get everybody out. But basically, the remaining pirates that end up surviving get locked up, and sort of Doppler and Amelia sort of fight back, and, you know, Jim kind of is the one who saves the day. And at the end of the day, this planet explodes, but there's still some treasure left behind. And even though Silver kind of attempts to make it, or escapes at the end, there is still this kind of touchy moment between him and Jim, and how he's like, because ultimately there's one point within the Disney climax where Silver ultimately saves Jim, and there's kind of this kind of reconciliation after, and he Silver sort of says, you know, here's some money for you and your mom, you know. I managed to get some money, and I thought that was actually rather touching, because unlike the original work where he just takes the money for himself, the John Silver in this Disney work actually just gives the money that he finds to Jim as a token of appreciation, and for being a I guess a good friend. So basically, that's ultimately what ends up happening in the Disney works. Silver sort of sails off and continues on his own path and journey, and sort of reconciles with everybody, and just kind of goes, hey, I need to make, and then, or more to Jim, I guess, so to speak, and says, hey, I need to escape now. And Jim, on the other hand, sort of appreciates him and sort of accepts him. And they have this little touchy moment, and they go on their separate ways. And then Jim comes back to the inn, and he's sort of more reformed now. He's not that rebellious teen that we saw in the beginning. He's come to a consensus of sort of who he is, and has embraced the journey that he has been on, and appreciates what Silver has done for him, and he feels like he allowed him to be able to grow as a person and get past, you know, the fact that his father left. And everybody sort of lives happily ever after. Doppler gets married. Hello.
I got my position.
Awesome.
A township.
How much do you get?
I get 1696.
Cool.
I raised from 1626 to 1696.
Yay! Almost
cents.
$1.
An hour.
That's cool.
It's like $21 a week.
Mhm.
$84 a month.
Mhm.
And the fixed 6 hours. That's important. Because
Yeah.
before I had only 5 3/4.
Oh, okay.
So this is fixed. They can't take me these hours away anymore.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
Yay!
That's the main thing.
Yep. Sorry, my mom was just telling me about something important. But back to sort of the ending. Having it sort of end like, you know, Jim coming out as being sort of the side sort of hero on this big journey on Treasure Planet, or on Treasure Island in the original work. I feel like in the Disney work, it seems more of a personal, has more of a personal touch to it. It seems like the characters are a little bit more in depth. It might be that the plot is a little bit more elaborate in Treasure Island, instead of a little bit like over the top like it is in the Disney work by having the planet explode. But at the same time, the relationship between Silver and Jim sort of ends. Again, Doppler and Amelia get married, and I guess they do have kids, I think. Yeah, at the end mentions that. Even though you could argue, yeah, that's probably not necessary. But again, it's not a perfect Disney film for sure. It's probably not one of Disney's most well recognized, and I don't think a lot of people really remember this film. But it's a good film in that I think it has some good stuff in it, and I think actually does maybe a little bit better than the original work. Like with Silver and Jim's relationship, you feel like it's a lot more interesting in the Disney work than it is in the original work, and having it be all like a planet is kind of interesting too, instead of it being just an island. So again, has these kinds of little interesting things to it. But basically that's really all I can say. It's kind of an all's well ends well story for both of them. You know, Jim, well, except the Disney work kind of plays out that things weren't really okay to begin with, and then at the end things turn out for the better. And I think Jim is a good character. I think Silver's a good character in both works, but I feel like the characters are a lot stronger in the Disney work, but in the original work I feel like the story is more it's not so overblown like in the Disney work, where we have to emphasize, oh yeah, this is a planet, right, and we need to have things explode and be all over the place. But again, it's kind of this little trade-off, but for the most part I think they're both interesting, and I think if you really do like Treasure Planet or either or Treasure Island, I would recommend checking out the other work. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say about it. Any questions, comments, concerns, more than happy to answer them. But until next time, everybody.